Hey everybody, how are we doing?
Hello.
My name is Christoph. All these lovely people are going to introduce themselves in a minute. Welcome to the Suckage is Part of Writing, your West Festival event this morning. These lovely people are going to take some time to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their book, and then we're going to jump into it. So Maggie, you are top left on my screen, so why don't you start us?
Oh, amazing. Hey, I'm Maggie Takuda Hall. I'm the author of The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea, which is out on May 5th from Candlewick Press. It's a rollicking queer fantasy adventure with everything that the title promises.
Marissa? I'll just call you out one at a time. How's that?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Cantor. I am the author of What I Like About You. It is a YA rom-com that asks the question, is it still a love triangle if there are only two people in it?
Janella.
Hi, I'm Janella Angelis. I'm the author of Where Dreams Descend, which is the first in a YA fantasy duology where Phantom of the Opera meets Moulin Rouge, but with magic. And it follows a powerful showgirl who takes center stage in a magical competition that becomes a dangerous game as disaster strikes behind the scenes. And it's out August 25th from Wednesday Books.
All right, Tara.
So I am the author of, most recently, Scavenge the Stars, which is the first in a young adult duology that is a fantasy reimagining of The Count of Monte Cristo, basically a girl stabbing men to get revenge for her family. Also the author of the Timekeeper series, which came out too many years ago now.
All right, Mr. London.
Hey, I'm Alex London, the author most recently of, I'm trying to point at it, but the thing's backwards, The Black Wings and Red Skies Falling, a series that Mark Hamill tweeted about once, so I had to share it. I got really excited. I just learned how to do that today, and clearly not very well. Black Wings Beating is an epic fantasy series set in a world of cutthroat falconry. It is about a brother and sister on an epic quest to capture the giant psychic eagle that killed their father. It's sort of Lord of the Rings, but instead of a ring, it's a giant psychic eagle, and instead of hobbits, it's queer teenagers.
All right. Ms. Kaufman, you were last. Sorry, that was just the way the screens worked out.
Yeah, sure. I heard that one before. My name is Amy Kaufman. I am the only important author of Aurora Burning, which is also coming out May 5th. So we're book birthday buddies. It is the sequel to Aurora Rising, and it is about a gang of misfits and losers who we really hope might save the universe. But they're not. I mean, who knows? Yeah.
Oh, they're about 50-50 at this point. All right, so I imagine we have a lot of aspiring authors in the audience this morning. The topic that we are talking about is suckage is part of writing, but where I wanted to start is examining that premise. Because the writing world is full of a lot of golden rules, and a lot of people will tell you what you must do and what you need to do. But everyone's journey down the road is a little bit different. So what I wanted to do is examine that premise. Like, is this a truism? Is suckage an inevitable part of writing? Is this a myth? Is it a golden rule? Is it somewhere in between? So how about Janella, you kick us off? Sorry.
Ooh, hot seat. So I don't want to generalize and say that suckage is part of writing for everyone, because I know everyone's different. Writing's different for everyone. So it definitely depends. I know from my experience that there was less suckage in writing in my early days when I was writing fanfic. That was a time of writing, writing fanfic. Like, you didn't really have any pressures. You had reviewers and stuff, but you really were just writing purely from your heart for joy. And the deeper I got into my journey with traditional publishing, like, additional pressures were just added into the fold. And I think that's where suckage kind of starts to bleed in, is the more obstacles that your muse encounters definitely affects the writing process from my experience.
I think the other nice thing about fanfic, right, is you're just skipping to the good bits all the time. Or at least that's what I did, and I assume I was doing it right, is, you know, you're never thinking, oh, you know, like, this needs to be book length, so I better spend some time setting stuff up. You're just like, and now, kiss.
Yeah.
Here write fanfic? Is everyone here from a fanfic background?
I am.
I am not.
No.
I wrote,
50-50.
I've written one piece of fanfic, and it was
What was the fanfic?
it was Harper Lee fighting aliens.
Whoa.
I mean, you might have come late to the game, but you went straight to the top.
All right, Tara, is this a truism or is it a myth?
It was definitely true for me personally. And I feel like, like Janelle said, I don't want to generalize, but from my experience, I definitely had to suck before I got better. I wrote my first novel when I was 15. So it was like 190,000 words of epic fantasy cliches. Like
Wow.
there was a talking wolf, there was a chosen one, there was a magical sword, it was just a whole bunch of stuff. And like I wrote fanfic as well, but like I had the same like feeling writing that book of like, I'm going to put everything I love into this. It's great. No inhibitions whatsoever, because I was 15. I didn't know what I was doing.
Have you gone back and revisited that book since?
Yeah, like I've definitely, like, every so often I'll go back and like reread a bit of it and be like, half of me is like, oh, I really love these characters and I miss that. It was like a whole series. It was a whole trilogy that I wrote when I was a teenager.
That is impressive.
And it was like so super intricate and I love the characters. And then the other half of me is like, oh no. So I definitely had to like write several books where I didn't quite have the skill set that I have now before I could, like, with every book, obviously, get better and better.
Right.
So looking back on it, I would definitely say they suck, but also like from a loving place.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
You get to the point where you are at now.
Yeah.
Right. Marissa, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with everyone so far in that I don't really believe in golden rules. I think that it's different for everybody. For me personally, it actually really helps to claim the suck, if that makes sense. Like for me, during the drafting process, I get really caught up in my own sort of perfectionism, and I would go back and self-edit and never get anything done. So for me, it really helps to say, okay, it's the first draft, it's going to be bad, that's okay. And that's really how I finish anything at all.
Do you edit as you go, or you find that if you do, that slows you down? You just have to get everything on a page and then go back and finish it.
Yeah, I think I used to self-edit a lot more when I was first starting out, but now I really try to, I call my first draft a trash draft, and that just get it all out, blurt it all out, whatever happens, and then just go back later and figure it out.
I have a 20-month-old who loves saying the word trash. She just loves throwing things out, and she loves saying trash. And so she will walk into the room while I'm writing and just go, trash, trash.
You're like, this is
an icon.
Do the rest of you guys edit as you go, or are you must get trash draft down and then go back and fix it?
I'm kind of the same as Marissa, where I used to self-edit like as I go. Like I would write something and then the next day go back, revise it, and then move on. And now I'm just like, no, I don't got time for that.
Yeah. It took me, I started The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea 8 years ago. And it wasn't until I finally let go of the idea of making everything perfect before I moved along that I was ever able to finish a first draft. And then it was done in like 3 months. And I was like, oh, I see. I've been doing something wrong here.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think it's kind of like if building a first draft is like building a human body and chapter 1 is like the hand. You don't want to necessarily make the hand absolutely perfect and get the manicure right and whatever, because what if you move on to the rest of the body and discover the hand was the wrong scale? Like you want to kind of get your skeleton down and then come back afterwards, and then, not to get too gross, but then layer in the muscle and then layer in the skin, and the manicure comes last.
Yeah,
that's an amazing metaphor.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that meme where it's a drawing of a horse that's like perfect at the back, and then they progressively lose the thread, and by the top it's just like a stick figure?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the problem with a lot of people's first drafts, and was certainly my problem.
Yeah. It's like, this was a really weird, some people in the audience will get this, but it's kind of like your Animal Crossing island. You're trying to get one corner of it perfect. Janelle is laughing at me. You have to get, well, this is my experience, because as I'm like terraforming my island, I'm like, this is all a big metaphor for drafts and revising, because like you get one corner perfect and then you're like, oh no, I have to move everything on the island. Let's bulldoze the cliffs and let's make a new river.
Right. And the thing is, when you're drafting, if you put too much effort into getting that one corner absolutely perfect, then either you're tossing out a lot of time you just spent on something, or worse, you leave it where it is because you already spent so much time on it, even though it kind of shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How about you, Maggie? Is this a truism or is it a myth?
I think a little bit of both. Like, writing is hard because you're completely on your own while you do it. And I know I have found like the loneliness of it kind of crushing at times. And it's hard work. And it's one of those things where like the more conscientious about how you do it, the harder it gets. But I also think that because writing is such a joyful job, like we get to just sort of live in our imaginations and make up stuff all the time. There's almost like a feeling of obligation that we have to temper how we talk about it in public, to be like, but it's really hard and it sucks and it's a terrible job and no one should do it. And all of those things are true, but I feel like we often lose sight of that because it's almost like we're trying to justify our livelihood instead of just sort of admitting that like, hey, this is awesome. I get to make believe like all the time. And people are letting me get away with it. This is not how I thought adult life was going to go.
Yeah, I think that's
A myth or no?
what?
Is it a myth?
No.
Is it true?
I think suckage is, it's a story we tell ourselves, often about ourselves, and it's not necessarily true. Sometimes we use it as a catch-all term when what's really, I think, what is true, imperfection is true, doubt is true. Your draft is not going to be perfect. Sometimes it's going to look like a horse. Sometimes it's going to look like a crab that you meant to look like a horse. Sometimes it's going to be awesome. Sometimes it's going to be awesome. There it is. Yes. So, sometimes you're going to think it's not awesome and it is, and sometimes you're going to think it's absolutely brilliant and it's garbage. The key is you're always telling yourself stories about it. So we have to kind of just accept that, and just because we believe it in the moment doesn't mean it's necessarily true. Allow ourselves to feel it and keep writing, because I mean, like Maggie said, it's a really awesome job, and if you give in to that feeling of suck, you're gonna give up.
Yeah. Ames, how about you?
I mean, I feel like there's kind of an obvious joke here about co-authoring with you and therefore terrible, but I'm going to move past it.
Being on the planet.
But I mean, I think, look, I mean, you know, only in my fantasies do I pick up a guitar and play a stadium concert the next day. Like, everything requires learning, and the learning never stops. I think one of the experiences you have when you write multiple books is that moment several books in where you realize that there's never going to be a technique, that you are going to have to reinvent every see,
this is too real. It's too real.
Yeah, like
it's too early for this.
You write a book, you are going to have to reinvent your method.
I just finished book 25 and it was like, I thought I'd be better at this by now.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's kind of like being a grown-up and being like, swear to God, I thought I would be more together by now, but I'm beginning to think this may be where it tops out. But she said on the internet to thousands of people in her pajamas at 4 a.m. But I think that said, the fact that you're constantly learning and constantly working day by day, sometimes that sucks, because sometimes you're in a mood where you're like, it would be really nice if this was easy today. And sometimes it's okay that you're learning, and sometimes it's okay that you're trying. And I think it's okay that it varies. I mean, on the whole, I try to be a joyful creator, but some days I'm just really mad that it doesn't come out the way I want it to. I can't pretend I'm always together about that.
And I kind of take solace in the fact that it happens every book. At some point in every book, I have hated the book that I'm working on with a few sons, and yet I can walk past a bookshelf full of books that I actually got through. So I know that feeling like this sucks and it's awful and I'm bad at my job is just one more step in the process, if that makes sense. All right, so what is the best part of writing? What part of the process do you enjoy most? Are you a drafter, you're an editor, you're a copy editor, you're a final polished kind of person, somewhere in between? Alex, how about you kick us off? What is
I love
the process.
What
is the best part of the process?
Yeah, the best part of the process. I mean, I love that moment at the beginning when an idea, it's like that first date that goes well, when the idea is like shiny and nice and you don't know where it's going, but you can tell somewhere exciting and your stomach's a little flutter and you don't want to screw it up. but like it's just you're in love and you're dancing and everything's just working, and you know it's gonna not always be like that, but it doesn't like temper the
snore or they chew their toenails or something like that. But
yeah, like you're gonna discover the weird things your book does when it thinks no one's looking as you get comfortable with each other and it starts doing it in front of you. Like, your book is gonna poop with the bathroom door open at some point. But, and you know that going in, but that moment where, you know, their farts still smell like roses, it's heaven. I love that part. And then I love that after the book is done, because I hate copy edits. I feel like an idiot every time. Like I feel so stupid when I like the copy editor. I feel like the copy editor is judging everything I've done.
Is that weird little language that they speak, like this code that they write in the margins, and you feel like an ignoramus because you don't know what any of it means? It's
right. Yeah. Like, not only did I not know how to do grammar, but now I don't understand the correction you're giving me.
Yeah. So, but right after that part, when the book is done and you start, I mean, it's that moment where you're connecting with readers, and we've all, you know, had it, where your book meant something to someone. Sometimes it's millions of people, sometimes it's just one other person. But that moment when you realize this thing you daydreamed in your pajamas matters to someone, that's pretty cool. The fact that they pay us to do it also seems like egregious. Like that's enough. It's not enough if my publisher is watching. Keep paying me. But like that moment, no, like our daydreams matter to somebody, even if it's just for a minute. And you can't replace. That's the coolest thing in the world.
How about you, Ames? What is the best part of the process aside from like talking to me every day?
Oh God, I mean, we're obviously talking a distant second. I mean, look, it is hard to beat like that first moment when, you know, everything is glorious and nothing hurts and you know it's going to be great. But I think for me, it's probably brainstorming. It's that moment when you're really starting to build it block by block. And because I'm mostly co-author, I do get to do that with someone. So there's a lot less sitting there by yourself being like, for several hours. Usually the other person throws an idea. And, you know, the way I tend to build my stories is kind of coming up with a giant list of just stuff we love and then building it slowly but surely into a book. And I think the throwing back and forth and hang on, shh, the dog is snoring. I hope you can't hear him. It's late. But like the throwing back and forth and the sparking and someone has an idea and then the other person goes, oh, yes, that idea. That is pretty amazing.
Yeah. How about you, Tara?
You know, other than what Alex and Amy have said, I think I actually really like drafting. I'm one of those weird people in the author community who always prefers drafting over revising, because for me it's like the exploration is super exciting to me. I'm like half plotter, half pantser, so I kind of like go in with like a good idea of what the story is and where I want it to go, but I have so many like empty pockets that I need to fill in as I go. So I don't know why, but the way that my brain works is that I fill them in as I draft. So like a lot of the times things will like slot together like puzzle pieces, and I'm like, oh, of course, like that was in this note because like I was apparently like setting myself up for this other thing. I'm a genius. And then sometimes it doesn't work out and I'm like, oh, nuts. But like when it does work out, it's like such an amazing feeling. It's so cool.
Yeah, there's very occasionally a moment where the book does something that you even as the creator didn't expect it to do.
Exactly, yeah.
That to me feels like absolute magic. Like when
it's so cool.
Take a life of their own and the book does something that even you didn't expect.
Mm-hmm. And it can happen with like character or like world building, like in even like the thing that I'm writing right now. Like I just discovered like a really cool world building thing that I didn't even, you know, think of in the initial brainstorming process. So like that discovery as I go is always like super magical to me.
Yeah. Janella, what is your favorite part?
I'd have to agree with Tara. I really love drafting because I consider myself as pantser or plantser, where I will pants, but I kind of know where I'm going. It's always good to know where you're going when you're writing. But on the revision side, I especially love that moment where you kind of start to understand what the story's about and who your characters are. I like to consider drafting as like you as the author talking out the story, and revision is when the story talks back to you and sort of reveals itself. Those are my favorite parts of writing. And my least favorite parts are those days when nothing makes sense anymore. We all have our high days where it's like, this is the best thing I've ever written. And then like the next day, nothing makes sense. Everything sounds terrible. Your writing is gross. So like, don't love those days, but the other good days are pretty good.
Yeah. Marissa, how about you? What's your favorite part?
Yeah, I agree with Tara and Janella. I don't think that liking drafting more is that weird. Like, I think that that's definitely a thing. For me too, I'm definitely, when I'm drafting, I wish I'm revising, and when I'm revising, I wish I'm drafting sometimes. That's especially true right now. I feel like this panel was almost cherry picked for me because my first revision of my second book is due to my editor this week. So I've been very in my feelings about revising right now, especially the second book. Second books are a thing. But I also really love that moment of just, I'm also kind of a planter. I have my roadmap. I generally know where I'm going, but like figuring out how the characters are going to get there is definitely my favorite part.
All right. And Maggie?
I agree with Alex. I do love that feeling. I've often compared like knowing you're writing the right project to knowing you're in love, like that same kind of feeling and sureness that you have. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I like it. Is amazing. But I actually love deleting stuff. I'm like a rare person. I know this makes me super weird, but my favorite feeling is when I realize something doesn't work or it doesn't quite fit, and I can just be like, you're gone, get out of here. It's like, no, it feels like when you clean up your house and you look around and you're like, a grown-up lives here. Like, that's how I feel when I delete unnecessary stuff out of manuscripts, other people's, my own. It doesn't matter. I love the black pen. It just like, you get out of here. You're done now.
You're a book bouncer. You're like the bouncer.
I know.
You're like, oh, I'll toss you out there. Cause trouble, you're
I
out.
don't have the physicality to do it in real life, so I just turned to the page. It was like, nah, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Do you save versions of it, or are you just like delete?
No, just get out. Yeah, I am.
Can you like teach me this power?
I'm just not precious about it, because like all writing is practice, right? Like if you think about it that way. When I tried, this was like part of the hard lesson of writing the first draft of my first novel, was like I would save things away and be like, just in case I need it there. And then I would visit it all the time like it was in prison and I was just waiting for it to get out. And I was like, okay, well, that's not healthy. So I just started getting rid of it. And then all of a sudden forward momentum was a lot easier, because I don't know, doing things like titling your book ahead of time, saving all the special little things that you think are brilliant that belong somewhere in there, were never healthy practices for me. They always made it harder for me to just follow a story where it was trying to go. And as soon as I let go of that baggage and was like, whatever, like if it's really brilliant, you'll think of it again. But like, I think we forget that when there's good ideas that you're circling around all the time, you can't forget them. Like they don't just die. So I don't know, saving the little documents and the notes with all my weird little thinklings didn't end up being helpful. So now they're gone and I don't miss them.
I love that, because it's not, it sounds like, oh, like you're cruel to your ideas, but it sounds like you operate from a place of amazing faith, right? That you can leap and you know it's going to find, you're going to catch something, you're going to learn to fly on the way down. Like that, I wish I had that confidence. I save everything. I squirrel all the stuff. I'm like, I'm going to need that. And I never do, you're right. But like, I save it because it feels safe.
Like the safety net. Like when my stuff leaves home, it's like my kids leaving home, but I make them come back for dinner regularly. Like I'm not ready. I leave it all in a file, and I never go back to that file ever. But I need to know that every Sunday, you know, I'll see them. They're okay.
So that was actually a really good segue to the next question, Maggie. There's one of my favorite stories ever. It's about Stephen King when he's writing the first chapter of Carrie. He's working away on his typewriter. He typed it up, thought it was garbage, literally threw it in the waste paper basket. And his wife, who used to clean out his office, came in later that day, found that chapter in his waste paper basket, read it, smoothed it out and put a note on it saying something like, I think you've got something here, you should keep working on it. And that was the chapter that launched his entire career. So how do we tell the difference between us thinking it sucks and it actually sucks? Like, how do you get over that mental barrier? How do you discern quality from just your brain being your own worst enemy?
So first of all, the real hero of that story is Stephen King's wife, and we should talk more about the spouses of famous writers who make their careers possible by doing things like emptying the trash, Rose mom doing his laundry and stuff. But also, so I threw out The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea years ago, and I went back to it because, like all good ideas, if you're actually into it, if it actually matters, you won't let it go, and it doesn't matter. So like it's almost completely different than it was the first time I sat down to write it. I don't know where the first scene I wrote from this story went. I think it's just gone forever. I think it's one of the things that I threw out. But I find that the more that I give myself permission to walk away from stuff when it doesn't feel right and to return to whatever idea that actually lit my fire about it in the first place, the better my writing tends to go. So I have kind of like boom and bust productivity, which is not a great way to be professional. It's just the way that I am, where I'll write like a whole first draft in like a sneeze because I've been thinking about this idea for so long and like trying it, deleting what I tried, trying it again, deleting it again. And then whatever it is, it's like the kernel of what's important from that story becomes clear to me, then I can write through. But I have to kind of get rid of stuff in order for that to happen. My first tries are rarely the one that's right. So I think for me, it's like not being precious. Like it's okay to abandon those particular pages, but keep thinking about the thing that made you passionate about it.
How about you, Marissa?
Yeah, I think that for me, once I got to the point in my like writing journey where I found critique partners, I think that that's a huge thing for me because I can definitely get into my own head and think that everything is terrible. But once I built up enough like trust to share it with someone else and sort of get that validation, much like the story, I think that that has been really helpful. But also it's just like Maggie said, learning when to walk away. What I Like About You, it's my debut. It's the fourth book I wrote. The second book I actually tried to get published. My first two, I was a teenager when I was writing them, very like learning how to write. The third one, it just became a moment where I was like, I don't think that this is going to happen for this one, and that's okay, because then like as soon as I put it down, I came up for the idea with What I Like About You. So each idea that may or may not suck, I don't want to say that every book prior sucks, but I feel like it's a building block to exactly like where you're supposed to be.
How did you find your crit partners? That's something that I get asked a lot. Where did you find the people that you trusted enough to show your work?
Honestly, mostly online, like on Twitter. I became really involved in sites like Wattpad, and there was one called Ink Pop that I was really active on when I was a teenager. So just meeting other writers I was a teen when I started writing, so other teen writers, developing friendships first, and then just starting to share our work through that.
Sure. Okay, Janella, how about you? How do you tell the difference between your brain telling you it sucks and it actually sucking?
Ooh, this is an interesting question, especially when you brought in like abandoning something because it sucks. My background as a fanfic writer, I was one of those monsters who abandoned everything. So I know, regardless of if they sucked or not, I mean, some of my fanfics truly not my best writing. The others were pretty decent. And for some reason, I just could not figure out a way to finish anything. When I was a younger writer, that was definitely one of my mental barriers, was being able to finish anything. So a lot of things went uncompleted, abandoned. And I feel like that touches on something that I think Alex brought up earlier, was how suckage is the story you tell yourself. And so it's like suckage can be that mental barrier, just like finishing is a mental barrier. So it's all about overcoming that, because sometimes it feels like what you're writing sucks, but if it's not finished, if it's not on the page, like you can't really say that yet, I guess.
All right, how about you, Tara?
I'm very bad at distinguishing the two because a lot of times if I write something and I'm like, oh, this is absolutely horrible, everyone will be like, this is amazing. And then if I write something and I'm like, this is amazing, everyone's like, here's 14 pages of changes. And I'm like, no, it was so good. Yeah. Like, for example, when I was writing the sequel to Scavenge the Stars, I definitely had like, even though I've like written many books before this one, I definitely still got second book syndrome with this one. So I was like, this is awful, it's terrible, it doesn't make sense. And like literally like, I went through like 3 editors with this thing. And all of them were like, it's amazing, it's so great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you lie, this is not true. So I feel like I definitely still have like a mental block of like what sucks and what doesn't. But I really like what Maggie said about like, if you know it's good, you will keep coming back to it. There's like this, like I said, I've written a lot of books before I could like get to the point where I could like pursue publishing. And once I kind of like had my debut under my belt and everything, there was a series that I tried to sell, and to be completely transparent, it failed on submission because this happens to all authors. But I still really love the project, and this was like a few years ago, and now I know like what to do if I ever come back to it, which I do want to do in the future, because like my brain every so often just keeps going back to it because I know it's good and I know it's like a great idea, and I just have to like redo it. So like part of me is like, well, I guess it like kind of like not sucks, but like it's not where it's supposed to be, but I know like how to make it where it's supposed to be. So there's kind of like, I really agree with Maggie with like, if you know, you know. Sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah, it's a matter of self-belief.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting yourself and trusting the process. Yeah. How about you, Mr. London?
I have a lot of abandoned projects, and I think something you said about sort of the magic that happens when you start seeing the connections and like the ways that your book is smarter than you are. Yeah. I think that happens when you finish something, right? Like you finish something and you start to see the things your book knows that you didn't. And there's magic in that. I really believe there's magic in finishing. And sometimes I don't want to know what that magic has to tell me, or I don't care anymore. So like I'll have an idea and I'm just like, oh, the fundamental questions of this story or the things that were pushing me forward to write, I'm just not feeling now. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I can't really judge, but I don't want to pursue this. I don't want to know what it has to tell me because I don't care, or sometimes because I care too much. Sometimes I have a project I keep over years now, keep coming back to, but not finishing. And I now know through a lot of therapy that I'm terrified of it. And I'm terrified of it. So I sabotage myself with it. I'll like, oh, well, let me work on this other project for a minute and sell that. Oh, look, now I have a contract, so I better, and I can't go back to it. So I find all different reasons. So sometimes a thing sucks, or sometimes I'm not ready to do it. What happens is the same. I don't finish it, but the causes are very different sometimes. But I'm not a big believer in things sucking. I'm a big believer in things aren't right, or like Tara said, things need a certain amount of work at certain times that you're not ready or willing to do.
That's not amazing yet.
Exactly.
Right. How about you, Ames?
I mean, look, the thing is, although the doubt is not a fun part of the writing experience, the doubt is actually a really good sign. I think anyone who writes a book and does not at some point think, oh my goodness, this chapter is terrible, this story is terrible, I am terrible, everything is terrible. I think that doubt is what drives you to keep trying to make it better. And I mean, Ira Glass, who hosts This American Life, talks about the taste gap. And if there are aspiring writers out there, I really recommend Googling Ira Glass and taste gap. And essentially what he's talking about is the fact that your taste is usually higher than your skills. So when you look at something and think that it sucks, what you're actually thinking is, this could be better, but I don't know how to make it the level of better that I'm aware could exist. And so sometimes it's just a matter of going and talking to a writer friend and you know, doing that thing where you start to brainstorm at them and then halfway through you're like, okay, great, thanks, you've been so helpful, I've got it. And you leave before they speak. And sometimes and I have projects like this, it's a case of looking at it and saying, I am not good enough to write you yet, but I will be. And I have books like that I'm looking at, and I have one that I'm just actually starting right now that I've been waiting since 2013 to be good enough at, and I don't know if I am yet, but I'm going to come back for one of my periodic pecks at it, and we'll see how it goes, and if it doesn't, I'll retreat and try later. But I think, yeah, it is a case, I think, of like, that's okay, it's it's not amazing yet, not that it's not amazing.
All right, so we have about 9 minutes left, so this will be the last question I have off our list, and then I'll try and get to some of the Q&A. We've got a lot of questions. So what is, in the interest of avoiding suck, what is the most valuable piece of writing advice you have ever received? We'll start with Marissa.
Oh, I think that it's something that we've been saying throughout this entire panel, is just finish the thing. You don't know if it sucks until it's done, and you can't make it better until it's done. And so really just get through the drafting and finish it.
Good advice. Maggie?
God, hard agree. So the only advice I ever really feel comfortable giving, because I feel like writing advice is like, it's free on the internet in large quantities for a reason. Like, everyone has an opinion or an experience or a way that has worked for them, and who knows what'll work for you. The only advice I ever give aspiring writers is that the only difference between an amateur and a professional is that professionals finish. You can't make something good if you haven't finished your draft. Like, the first chapter will never be polished and perfect if it doesn't have an ending to answer to it.
Janella, how about you? Your most valuable piece of writing advice for aspiring authors?
My favorite one is to keep your eyes on your own paper. Because I feel like, especially when you are publishing a book, you see so many distractions, you get a lot of pressures that hinder your own writing process. So to be able to focus on your writing and what you're working on next, and be able to finish it, like everyone's been saying, is really key to writing and completing those projects.
Amy, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, same. I think we're all saying the same thing for a reason. I think it's an Anne Lamott quote: you can't edit a blank page.
Yeah.
And you can't. You can make it better once you've got it, but it's always going to be perfect in your mind. It's always going to be first date gorgeous in your mind, but unfortunately no one can read your mind. So
I always say the worst writing I ever do is better than the best writing I never do. That's my
right.
Yeah. But I'm going to actually give a different piece of advice then, because I agree with all of that. But I'm going to say some advice that someone gave me early on was celebrate everything that happens in your writing journey. Yeah. Bad stuff is going to come. There's going to be inevitably, whether it's doubt or publishing setbacks or whatever it is, bad stuff's going to happen. Great stuff is going to happen. Celebrate the great stuff at every step of the way, whether it's a cookie because you wrote your word count goal for the day, or a giant party because you sold a book for $17 million. Whatever it is, celebrate everything, because it's all an accomplishment.
Well, and you know what? I mean, the thing is, there's actually science behind that, which is that we are animals, and if we constantly promise ourselves something and then actually punish ourselves instead of celebrating, eventually we learn not to do it. We can be trained like everybody else. And if you constantly say to your brain, if you write 1,000 words today, you're going to have been a good brain. And then it writes 1,000 words and you go, well, everyone else would have done it faster and they're not very good. And, you know.
Look at that, science. I didn't even know. See, the panel is smarter than I am. Just by saying.
Just like our books are smarter than us.
Yeah.
And Tara, how about you?
I'm particularly fond of saying write your heart trash, which is my version of saying write for yourself and not for others. Like, I always do my best writing where I'm like, this is like so weird and I love it, and it's like exactly to my tastes, and like not caring about what my agent will think, what my editor will think, what the readers will think, like just caring about what I think, what I want to pick up and read. And usually those end up being my best scenes. So write your heart trash, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, when Amy and I first started working on Illuminate, one of the things we got told was that no one reads science fiction and publishers don't buy science fiction. If we had to listen to that advice, then who knows where we would be. So, I'm
except Alex Blacktooth London would still be alive.
Right, yes. For those who don't know, we killed Alex in the third Illuminate book, but you died well, my friend. You died bravely.
I mean, we actually killed him after he loudly requested that we do so at a Your West after party in the middle of
way to call me out.
That's a heavy metal concert, may I add.
It's friendship right there.
So looking through the Q&A, a lot of people are asking about motivation, which is one of the questions we didn't get to because, you know, we're in the middle of a global pandemic and things are maybe darker than they used to be. But just in general, sometimes getting up out of bed and making yourself do this every day can be pretty tricky. So do you guys have any tricks or tips for motivating yourself to push past that hump? How about we start with Marissa? Got like 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I think that it's a really hard time to create right now. It's a really hard time to be a person right now. So I think first of all, just be really gentle with yourself. Like if it's not happening, we're all gonna have good days and bad days with our creative process right now. And some days, I mean, I just want to play Animal Crossing, and that's totally okay. I think what's been helping me is to, if it's not happening creatively, is to lean into something else creative that I can do instead. Like right now, I'm sheltering in place with my boyfriend. He plays the piano and he's teaching me how to play the piano. And it's just something low stakes creative to step away to find inspiration when I can't be doing the things I usually do for inspiration, like taking walks, and I'm in New York. So I find so much inspiration in the city that like I just can't access right now. So yeah, low stakes creativity, and it's okay if you can't.
How about you, Janella?
I feel like I'm gonna piggyback on Marissa's answer by saying be gentle with yourself, because it really is a hard time to create and to promote, you know, your own art. It feels really awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I feel like I haven't been doing my best writing or any writing at all because it's been so hard. So I take that as my brain needs to take a rest. And when I take a rest from writing, I usually just actively fill the creative well. And like what Marissa said, do hobbies. I've been watching a lot of great TV that's been giving me some good ideas. So just do things that make you happy, and hopefully that will put you on the mend to getting back to your writing.
Tara, how about you?
Yeah, mostly just playing video games. I'm definitely like, I had 2 deadlines in a row, which is a good, you know, motivation. You know, you got to meet the deadlines. But when you're not on deadline, when I'm working on something that's just like completely for myself, it's a lot harder. So I take a lot of breaks, a lot more breaks than I used to, for sure. And that's where the video games come in, and you know, watching great shows, and stress baking. I was actually stress baking a cake the other day, and I had like an idea for something, and I was like, oh, I feel so much better. Because like taking a step away from it is just as important as sitting down and actually doing the work.
Maggie, motivation.
I agree with everyone, but especially Janella, what you were saying about refilling the creative well. I mentioned earlier, I have kind of boom and bust periods of productivity, and I'm in a bust period right now. And is it the pandemic? Is it the fact that I just had a baby? Who knows? Who cares? I'm taking this time to kind of gather ideas again, and circle back around the ones that I've been kind of thinking about for ages and can't seem to quite let go of. And so I spent a lot of time just staring out the window and thinking about, you know, nothing in particular, and being kind of unfocused, and accepting the fact that that is also part of the process of like, not every day am I going to wake up and be like, I know how this plot's going to go and it's going to be great.
All right, Mr. London, you got about 30 seconds.
I got nothing to add. They covered. Be kind to yourself, refill the creative well, blah, blah, like all of that. I don't like, that's great advice. I mean, it's yeah.
All right, you know what? I release on the regular 3 books a year. I am one of the more productive people in YA, and it just took me over a month to get a couple of chapters on Aurora 3 to J. So if you are struggling to write right now, there's a global pandemic on. Go easy on yourself.
Your first job is to be human, right? Like be
right, and to take care of yourself and everybody else. It will all, you know, like leave it if you need to. The thing that I have found most helpful is actually a piece of advice I saw from an author called Delilah S. Dawson. And she said that sometimes it helps, not every day, but sometimes it helps to think of your story as somewhere, not that you have to go work, but that you get to escape to. So I've been thinking about getting to escape into worlds, and that has unlocked me a little bit. But take care of yourselves, friends. It's fine if you're not writing right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild time right now. Okay, I think we are out of time. So thank you all beautiful people for being here tonight, this morning. I wish we were all in the real, but we will no doubt see each other in the real sometime real soon. Thanks to the Your West guys and everybody who showed up today to listen to us talk. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we're out of here.